Baruch Hashem. Good morning, everyone. I have in my hands a book I would like to say a few words about. Steve McQueen, The Salvation of an American Icon. And it's written by Greg Laurie. Greg Laurie is a lovely minister, evangelist, Harvest International, I think. And he had always admired Steve McQueen. And there was a very famous movie called Bullitt. It's got a Ford Mustang in it. And it's the most famous car chase in film. And Steve McQueen was always doing stunts, and he made many movies, made lots of money, and I might add, lots of mistakes. But to show you the great compassion of the Lord and the kindness of the Lord, the generosity of the Lord, this man who was sort of self-destructive, drinking and stuff, he was given a few chances before the Lord really fished him up. One time, he was invited to Sharon Tate's home the night of the Manson murders. Whoa. Had he been there, he probably would have fought his way out, but he would have probably been killed. He was outnumbered vastly. And on the night of those murders out there with Charles Manson, he could have been sitting there with all the rest of them having a party. He did a lot of drugs. He probably killed his body doing drugs. And so he was he was a bad child. He had a rough upbringing, alcoholism in the family, abandonment by parents, and so forth. And yet, later on in the book, you'll see that he acknowledged his mother and father with loving tributes on their gravestones, and he tried to take care of them at the end. He actually supplied anything they needed. He supplied it for them because he did want a family, and he did want someone to love him for himself. And so in this story, it tells all about his ups and downs and his romping around and all that stuff, but it's sort of, the lens closes in towards the end of his life when he discovers that he has cancer, and he begins to swell up in his abdominal area, and he has tumors the size of a baseball in his abdominal area. He goes down to Mexico. He hears about a cure, a treatment. There was no cure. There was no treatment for the poor man. And he begins to get very sober, and the Lord begins to send believers to him. He starts to go to church. One day, someone comes calling named Dr. Billy Graham. He calls upon him, and before he leaves his hospital room, he says, "Here, I'm going to give you my Bible." And he gives him his Bible. He didn't lead him to the Lord, but he gave him his Bible. And Mr. McQueen calls out as he's going out the door, "I'll see you in heaven." And that was a wonderful thing for Billy Graham to leave the hospital room with. And shortly after that, Steve McQueen passed away. The doctor who had done one of his final surgeries with all these tumors in his gut, he had passed out. He just collapsed after the surgery. It went on so long. He tried to remove those cancers. This is around 1980. And Steve McQueen had a funny sense of humor. He said, "Did I get my figure back? Did my stomach go down?" He wanted to know if, he was in good shape. Maybe he wanted to do another film. I don't know. But this gentleman did confess Jesus, Moshiach, ben David. He confessed him before men. He confessed him shortly before he passed on, and his story confesses him today. So if you were looking for a good summer read, you go to Barnes & Noble or Amazon, and you buy this book.
Amen. Steal it.
Millions loved his movies, yet very few know his story.